Hey, real quick question. Is the video going to matter at all?
I mean, we post the video that'll be on Facebook and YouTube, but
don't whack off during this, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, I got another monitor going, so I could.
Yeah.
Can we use that in the intro? Don't whack off.
Welcome back to another episode of Bourbon Pursuit. And before we start talking about private barrels and our concerns with them, we got to go through a lot of news first. And we are in our 1 week countdown before Bourbon and Beyond kicks off here in Louisville, Kentucky at Champions Park, September 22nd and 23rd. If you haven't gotten tickets yet, it's crunch time. It really is. So go to bourbonpursuit.com, click the banner for Bourbon and Beyond, go get your tickets. There's also the Bourbon and Beyond app that you can download so you can figure out what bourbon sessions you want to go to, what cooking sessions you want to go to, the bands you want to see, and you can get your schedule completely made out. So it's really cool. So go and check that out. The other thing that's happening is it's Bourbon Heritage Month. So that means it's a few things. One, a lot of new fall releases are starting to come out. And two, it's Kentucky Bourbon Festival Week. And if you are listening to this podcast today, we are going to be at one of our favorite events, which is a Bourbon Bonanza. That's going to be taking place in Bardstown tonight. So if you're there, come say hi. We like to meet our listeners, so please come and do that. Now, if you're also going to be at Bourbon Bonanza, we have a little bit of a surprise in store for you that you get an opportunity to kind of see the next project and taste the next project that we're working on. And if you're also a Patreon supporter and you're part of our community, then you saw one of the teasers that we have put out this week as well. So go ahead, go check that out. I'm sure it's not going to be disappointing. Well, at least I hope not, because we're super excited about it. And I know from the response we've already gotten on Patreon, a lot of people are excited about it as well. Now, one of the other cool things is that Ryan got the opportunity to go to DC about a week and a half ago. And while he was there, he stopped by Jack Rose because that's what you do in DC. And he opened up the menu and there it was. It was finally there. The Bourbon Community Roundtable Buffalo Trace Barrel Pick that we have done has made it onto the menu at Jack Rose, and it's there for $9 a pour. So next time you're in DC, make sure you go to Jack Rose and go check it out. In regards of just fall releases, Old Forester Birthday Bourbon as well as Michter's Toasted has started hitting shelves across the nation. And we also have to give a special shout out to Jimmy and Eddie, who are celebrating their 101 year anniversary of combined working years, you could say, at the distillery. Now, today's episode, we've raved about them and we're starting to do our own. And that's private barrel picks are becoming just really the hot new ticket. It's the hot new item. And these carefully brought barrels they're selected, they're taken into the store, and they're chosen really for a particular audience. However, you need to figure out, how sure can you be about them? Do you really trust who's picking them? Because a label said it might have been chosen by a master distiller, but does that really mean a master distiller picked it? Or was it just part of the leftovers from other barrel picks? And of course, we have to cover stickers because stickers are just the hot newness that's just happening right now. It's a podcast that, in my opinion, it's both fascinating and intriguing, and it's going to make you think about maybe twice going into an unknown store and just purchasing some random barrel pick. Now, if you want to know more about bourbon and everything that we do, hit that subscribe button, whether you're on YouTube or iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play or wherever you get your podcast. And if you do like the show, make sure you join us, right? The community of Patreon is growing every single day. We've got things such as our own private barrel picks, your opportunity to be able to buy those bottles. As I'd mentioned, a little teaser that's coming out for even more bourbon that's going to be coming. But we've got t-shirts, hats, patches, koozies, stickers. Go check it out, patreon.com/Bourbon Pursuit, and you can go and help support the show and join our community. And make sure you're also following us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We're just posting stuff all the time. So you need to figure out what we're up to and interact with us through there. And with that, enjoy this week's episode. And here's Fred Minnick with Above the Char.
I'm Fred Minnick, and this is Above the Char. This week, I want to talk about family. We recently welcomed into the world Julian Joseph Minnick. As I held my second son in my arms, my heart couldn't have been more filled with love. And one of the first things his mama asked for while in recovery, where's the Old Forester Birthday Bourbon? Of course, she couldn't drink it because of the medication. And, well, truthfully, I later accidentally broke the bottle. But, that's another story. The point to this story is the deep family connection bourbon brings out. My family was just minutes away from the delivery room, and Mama was already talking about bourbon. I'm sure you have a story like that too. Bourbon runs deep in our blood, and it evokes a certain lifestyle and cultural passion you simply do not find with other spirits. And there's no greater example of this than with Freddie Johnson, the famous tour guide at the Buffalo Trace Distillery. Johnson joined the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame this week with fellow inductees Max Shapira, who earned the Lifetime Achievement Award. He's the CEO of Heaven Hill. Pierce Lyons, the founder of Altac, who passed away in March, and Matthew Shattuck, the Beam Suntory CEO. All of these men are extremely deserving, but there's something special about Freddie's story that just pulls on your heartstrings. He's the first African-American and tour guide to be inducted into the Bourbon Hall of Fame, and he's arguably the face of the Buffalo Trace Distillery because of the passion his father, a leek hunter, instilled in him. When you take a tour with Freddie, you feel the passion, the history, and the knowledge seeping out of his words. If you've never taken a tour with him, you must schedule your trip immediately and book Freddie for what will be an incredible experience. The thing that always stands out with Freddie is just how he reveres his father, Jimmy Johnson, who became the first African-American warehouse supervisor in a Kentucky distillery. Freddie often tears up when talking about his father, especially when he cared for him in his final years. That pride, that sense of family is carried through at Buffalo Trace, whose CEO Mark Brown speaks of the Johnson family as if they were his family. That's because they are. And that's what bourbon does. It brings us together. I dream of one day sharing the bourbon passion with my two boys, and I hope that they can think of me as Freddie has always thought of his father. And that's this week's Above the Char. Hey, my first issue of Bourbon Plus drops soon. Make sure you subscribe at bourbonplus.com and follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Fred Minnick. If you've got an idea for Above the Char, hit me up. Until next week, cheers.
From their bar to yours, Chad and Sarah of the popular YouTube channel It's Bourbon Night bring you their favorite at-home old-fashioned mix with the new Elemental Elixirs Golden Hour Syrup. It's a custom-made syrup with notes of bold black tea, warm spices, and orange zest. All you need is your favorite whiskey and ice. No bitters needed. One bottle makes 16 drinks, so that's only $1 a cocktail before you add your own whiskey. They can also be enjoyed in other cocktails or spirits, mocktails, coffee, tea, and anything you can think of. It's crafted locally in Lexington, Kentucky, and you can get your bottle now at whiskeyambitions.com. Always find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from at the lowest price, it's easy to find your favorite Cabernet or a new single-barrel bourbon to try with some help from one of their friendly guides. And with every bottle comes the confidence of knowing you just found something amazing. With the lowest prices for over 30 years, find what you love and love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Drink responsibly and be 21. Ed Bly and Rising Tide Spirits are back again with a new release of Old Stubborn Bourbon. And this release of Old Stubborn is a premium hand marriage of 10, 11, and 12-year cask strength, barely filtered pot still bourbon. It comes in at a staggering 123.8 proof. And the flavoring grain for this one, which the last one was wheated, but this time it's now rye. Rich, sweet, and bold with a long finish that's sure to be another eye-opener. You can order online at Sealbox or thebourbonconcierge.com, and you can even purchase in person at Revival Vintage Spirits, and even now with very few select stores in Kentucky. You can get it now while you can, but be sure to do it because it's not going to last long. Do you ever pour yourself a bourbon, swirl it around, and then start struggling to come up with tasting notes? And perhaps you're also looking for a good Father's Day gift idea. Well, you can now solve both with a kit from Knows Your Bourbon. And unlike other nosing kits on the market, Knows Your Bourbon kits feature real ingredients for the most authentic aromas. You can smell real Tahitian vanilla bean instead of some synthetic aroma that's just made from chemicals. So head on over to knowsyourbourbon.com and enter code BP10 for 10% off your order.
Play Whiskey Wednesday Round 11, the memory game. Until June 26, each week you can win one of our 12 incredible grand prizes. Select 2 doors at checkout. And if they match on drawing night, you'll win that bottle. Not a match? No worries. You still score a Weller 12-year. Every $5 ticket gives you 5 chances to win, including 4 weekly bonus prizes. Get your tickets now at give270.org. Charitable Gaming License ORG 0002703.
Welcome back to the episode of the Bourbon Pursuit Podcast, the official podcast of bourbon. Kenny and Ryan here with you, recording a good episode because, this is something that Ryan always talks about. And I know it's going to be near and dear to his heart because today's going to be all focused on private barrel selections. And really it's going to be focused around some of the concerns and some things you need to know about as a consumer when you're going to be going into a store and buying a barrel. So, or should I say buying a bottle? We'll be the ones buying the barrel, I guess. So, Ryan, I guess kind of talk a little bit about your love affair with single barrels and why you always call them about the unicorns of the world.
Yeah, so in this new bourbon, I guess, economy, limited editions, I'm too lazy to go deal with them. I'm not going to camp. I'm not going to hunt. It's just impossible here in Louisville, Kentucky. So my new unicorns in the chase is private barrel selections from stores, from bird groups, just wherever I can find them, because I think those are where the true gems are. And so I'm super excited because, like you said, this is my new passion because the limited releases, I'm kind of over them. They're lame.
Well, I mean, not only that is there is a wide amount of stuff that you can get. I think that you could easily spend any day, 365 days of Louisville, and every single day you could probably find a different single barrel store pick that's around here just because of, the mass amount of stores. And I think that the allocations that some of these stores get. So you have your variable pick. I guess, Ryan, first off, if you had the choice, what's going to be your pick of choice when you go to a store and if you see something that's a single barrel, what do you gravitate towards?
I mean, probably first choice is a Four Roses. I mean, that's because to me, I've been on barrel picks and Four Roses gives you the most probably diverse selection and allows you to pick the most, gives you the most choices, I guess. And that those seem to be the most unique to me. From there, probably old Weller store picks are going to be, the antiques are going to be the next choice. I mean, that's kind of getting played out and burnt out to where now those are even like become limited releases. And now it's become so absurd that you have to kind of hunt and camp for those. So now
you've got 8 minutes to get to the store, right? Yeah,
exactly. So anymore, I mean, the 1792 foolproof ones have been pretty good that I've had the store picks, but probably Four Roses will be there's just not a ton out there. I mean, used to be old Scouts, were the ones to go to and some of the MGPs, but now those have kind of dried up. So it's, you just gotta, Roses are always easily available, but I do love those like old Scouts, MGPs, the foolproofs are kind of coming around for me as well.
Yeah, that's a good one. I think we'll talk about that here as we go. So let's go ahead and take a moment and introduce our guests tonight. So tonight we have Brett Atlas and Luke Castle. Both of these gentlemen are contributors to bourbonandbanter.com. So gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Appreciate it.
So before we kick it off, I think we should go ahead and just let you all introduce just a little bit about yourself. We typically always ask, like what was your first run-in with bourbon or what was some of those first memories? But, go ahead and you can just take it on whatever direction you want. Brett, we'll leave with you.
My first real introduction to bourbon was my freshman year in college, probably around 1991. My freshman initiation into my fraternity as a pledge, bring up a tray of shots. And at that time it was Wild Turkey 101 and there do 6 shots. And I did. And, we go through and you don't drink it again for 3 years because it was disgusting. And now that bottom shelf swill is being chased by everyone, including myself. It's few $100 a bottle at that early 90s turkey. So that's where it kind of all started for me. And I got back into it right after college. And it's kind of been a passion ever since.
Yeah, I think me and you kind of share a history there because I didn't have bourbon until I went to college as well. And so it was sort of like the kicking off point for me too, where I started off there and then it just didn't stop.
No, it's great. It's just been a lot of fun and it continues to be. I mean, I know people get aggravated with it, but I just love it.
Sounds good. So, Luke, go ahead. Take it over.
Yeah, similar. I could go think back to college and drink a Jim Beam at Cokes and whatever got the job done for your night out back then. After college, I actually gravitated more to wine, more of a defense mechanism. I entertain a lot for work. Had to learn my way around the wine menu, so I didn't get taken advantage of, I guess. But after dinner, drinks, having a whiskey here and there. Maker's Mark, probably the first bourbon that I would consider to be more high end. And then got into a group of buddies here in Minneapolis where we did a brown liquor night once a quarter and started as a Scotch, but kind of gravitated to other things. And I can remember in 2011, we decided we were going to try drinking bourbon that night. And Pappy had just been released. So there was 6 guys in the group. We each picked a vintage to buy, and we all went out and bought a bottle of each of the Pappies and drank it all that night. So,
well, how long ago was this then?
2011.
Oh, okay. So it was still attainable back then. Yeah.
Hey, you can walk in.
Just sit on the shelf.
Yeah, it totally sat there. So we drank it all. Like, I don't think there was literally anything left in any of those bottles that night. And, got kind of spoiled, but that was kind of my first foray into the higher end stuff. Blanton's, for a lot of people, is the gateway. I would say that was one for me as well.
Right. So I guess after that one night, I mean, I don't know about you, at least I still get a hangover when I drink Pappy. So was your head killing you if you were crushing every single bottle in the lineup?
Probably.
Probably.
It was a while ago, right?
Yeah. You can put a lot away.
I know it'd be ideal if these expensive bourbons didn't give you hangovers, like it still hurts just as bad as the cheap stuff.
Quality doesn't help.
They weren't that expensive back then. I actually went, it was around that time. I went to the store. I told the store to get this Pappy Van Winkle I read about back in, I think, 2010. And I went over there when it came in, and they had a bunch of that. They sold out of everything else, but they had a whole shelf full of that squat bottle 10. And I got so mad that I bought one bottle and I left the rest all on the shelf. And I came home and I just started mixing drinks with it and pouring it over ice and just cursing the bottle. And obviously, now that's one that's really sought after too. So we all make mistakes.
Oh yeah. We could have a whole episode on missed opportunities or like stuff we just passed on. It's sickening.
Oh, bourbon regrets. Absolutely.
Yeah, bourbon regrets. Yeah, for sure.
Coming next week.
Probably.
That's right.
With all these other things. And I guess that'll probably lead into something we're talking about tonight too, because I'm sure there are some of those store picks that are out there. You always say, I wish I would have bought more of them. Or you wish you have a little bit of FOMO to think, did I pass not getting that one too? So I think that'll lead into our discussion. So back on episode 124, we had actually covered creating a barrel picking group with Eddie Noel, the Bourbon Cartel. And we talked about how, individual barrel picks, talked about it before, but tonight we're really going to take up more of a deep dive into it. So I kind of want to just gauge you all, Ryan talked about it a little bit, but in your opinion, what makes barrel picks more special than their standard bottling counterparts?
Well, for me, I think Dave Perkins from High West said it best, that bourbon drinkers usually want 2 things: something they never had and something they can't get. And private picks offer both of those. And they're really limited editions. You get 10,000 bottles sometimes in a wide limited release that everyone chases after. Whereas, private barrel, you may get 150, 180 bottles. And there's even a category of ultra rare within the rare. The Elmer T. Lee store picks, the Van Winkle store picks, ones that they just don't do anymore. And those are truly ultra limited. And, I think that with a private pick, you know what you get when you buy it on the shelf, but if they're picked well, you're going to get something off profile. You're going to get something unique. And then, when you consider now the demand kind of, in my opinion, affecting the quality of some of these things, Luke had mentioned Blanton's earlier. I mean, I loved Blanton's, and for me, it hasn't really been the same lately. But I think I just went recently and did a Blanton's pick, and, it's an on-profile pick, yes, and it's a great Blanton's, which in this day and age, in this market, that's special if you can find a really good Blanton's out there. So that's kind of where I come at from this, and that's what makes them sort of special for me.
What about you, Luke? What do you kind of think? Why do you think single barrels sort of stand out more than just something? I mean, whether it's just a standard, say, Russell's Reserve or Buffalo Trace, something that's an everyday shelf item. However, you see the opportunity a store gets in a single barrel, like, why would you gravitate towards that one versus something that is just pretty standard?
Yeah, I mean, I don't just automatically buy it. Excuse me. If it's a store pick, I got to know who did it, really. Brett just went on this great pick. I trust his palate 100%. We've had a lot of pours together, so I know that he's going to pick a good barrel. So whatever, if he's involved with it, I'm interested. But you walk into a grocery store where the store manager maybe got sent 3 random samples and maybe didn't even bother drinking him, just picked one. I'm probably not going to buy it unless they offer it up first as a sample. And then last, just a store manager or a owner that is a good store. Kind of spoiled here in Minnesota. Ace Spirits, who you interviewed, Lewis, a couple months ago. He knows what he's doing. He goes to Kentucky all the time. If he gets a barrel in, there's a pretty good chance it's going to be good. So for me, it's the opportunity to kind of steal the palate of the people that know what the heck they're doing.
There was a good question that actually came in from somebody on the chat, and they said, "Are barrel picks actually always better than standard releases?" I guess I kind of hyped it up, and I just said, they'll always be better. Like you always towards this, but I mean, is there a certain time when, like it's something that just tastes like crap? Like is that a thing that happens?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah, Sam, I once had a pick that I was so excited to have that was so bad that 3 people left my house to go home and get their standard releases to make sure they were drinking the same thing.
Yeah. Tell us about that. What was it?
I don't want to do.
Oh, come on. You can't leave us hanging like that.
It was a Buffalo Trace pick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not going to say it hasn't happened before. We actually had a sample sent in from somebody who actually, we did it blind. Ryan and I both did. And we were tasting it. We were like, is this a rye? Like, what is this thing? This is the most crazy thing. It was just a standard Buffalo Trace, or it was an off-profile Buffalo Trace that was picked by Cork.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had no idea. But so, yeah, it does happen.
You can go way off profile sometimes. I mean, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, and I've had it happen too, where you pick them and you think you got this great pick, and then when it comes, you're just like, oh, this is not what I was remembering it being. And mostly it happens with the ones that get proofed down, because you're picking it barrel proof and then you're trying to manipulate it to where it's the same proof as it bottling. And so that can kind of throw it off. And then also too, sometimes when you're in those warehouses, it's like cold and like you're just the whole experience like takes over your senses and everything tastes good. And then you get it back and you're like, oh, this is not what I was envisioning from what I remember. And, you get a little buzz. So your palate's probably a little thrown off as well.
Mm-hmm.
Luke, you had mentioned in talking about Lewis at Ace Spirits and saying, you trust a certain store. So I guess that kind of leads into, how do you know if you're going to choose a single barrel from somewhere? Like, how do you gauge that? I mean, is there a level of trust you have to have with the store owner? Is it something that you have to just, gamble with sometime and then hopefully it works? And then after that, you can become a repeat customer. So what's the thought process behind that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, you got to trust the people doing the actual picking. Did they go there? Did they take samples in the store? If they'll let you open it, Ace always has their stuff open, so you could try it before you buy it. And I think a lot of stores are moving that direction. I think that's really important. But again, I just don't buy blind from places that I don't trust, and they won't let me try it first. So that's the biggest part.
I think there's a couple of questions you have to ask. I mean, one thing people don't really realize is, there's a grocery store chain that's done some really good picks, but they also, the majority of their picks, they're not allowed to taste them anymore, and people don't know that. So they have to do their picks by smell. But people don't know that. And then there's that's for the whole chain. But if an individual store does a barrel pick, they actually will do it themselves and they'll taste it. But you're not going to know the difference. I mean, I'd sure like to know if I was buying a private pick, how it was selected. And the other thing I think that's really key is to ask those questions. I mean, I know liquor stores where they get the samples from the distributor. They get a sample kit sent to them. They have to pick the best of 3, and they think they've done a great job. What they may not realize is those barrels may have been rejected by a bunch of people who've gone to the distillery that have passed over those barrels. Those sample packs have gone out to other stores who've said no thanks. I mean, you really have to know. I would just ask the store, how did you do it? Who tasted it? How many picks do you do a year? I mean, if they don't do many picks a year, they're probably getting taken advantage of by their distributor because they'll do it every chance they get. And do they go to the distillery? Have you visited the distillery? Do you have a relationship there? Have you gone to do barrel pick in a warehouse before? And those are the questions you can just ask them. And then you can't always taste it. I found that out. I mean, not everybody has a tasting license. So while I will ask, I mean, they'll let you try it if they're proud of it, but sometimes they're not allowed to.
Yeah. And one thing people got to remember too is that these liquor stores want you to buy these private barrel picks because they have a bigger margin on them. They're paying the same exact cost as, for a standard Four Roses single barrel or whatever, but they're able to mark it up more because it's a special release. So they're going to push you towards these. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind too.
So I guess another question to ask you there, Brett, and I think you kind of triggered something too, was if a store is doing this and say they do have samples shipped to them, I mean, is it 99% of the time, do you really think it's something that are just rejects? And then if they can't make it to the distillery, what other options do they have?
Well, for starters, I would ask them, do you ever say no to a pick? I mean, I would have more respect for a store that gets samples handed them and they say, no, thanks, we couldn't find one we want. So that's something I'd want to know. I think some options are, I know for Four Roses, at least in Nebraska, if you want to do a barrel proof pick, you have two options. You can either go to the distillery or you can have, the master distiller there, Brent Elliott, pick it for you. Those are your two options. Otherwise, you get the 3 samples and you get 100 proof Four Roses, which, can be fine. I was at the gift shop recently. They had 100 proof pick. I would prefer not to have 100 proof pick. I'd like something a little higher. But those are basically, that's it. I mean, those are your options.
Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I like those questions, but it all comes down to, is it good or is it not? And not every store is good at it. I helped a local here last week pick a 1792 single barrel. They got 3 samples sent. One of them was good. The other 2 were not good. And the distributor was trying to push them to not even take samples, just to let the master distiller pick for them. And I was like, you got to do what you got to do. I understand you're running a business. You got to make a profit, but you should always take the option to do it. And so we did, and it ended up being better, I think. But yeah, I mean, most of these places that are trying to get into it today, I think that really matters as well. The stores that we all know, the picks that we've had, the private barrel groups that we have all tried from, have been doing it for years. And so they get first crack. They're usually in there the first quarter of the year, so they're not going to get the leftovers. And they're going to get options that you don't get later in the year. And that these newer shops are like, well, I'll just take whatever you got because I'm happy to put my sticker on it.
Yeah. I can attest to that because when Kenny and I went with Reed and Emerald from 17B, I mean, they rolled out like the whole basically warehouse, like whatever you want, and then I've been with other store owners and they roll out like 3 or 4, like here you go. And it is amazing how they kind of, based on the relationships and how long they've been doing it, what kind of offerings you're even available to pick.
And Luke, I guess another question to your response there when you were picking the 1792. I mean, is 3 samples really enough to really gauge off of? I mean, you said you really had a 33% chance of doing good, right? I mean, if they were giving you 7 or 8, I'm sure you wouldn't have said no. But I mean, is 3 really enough to come away with something, in your opinion?
It's tough. I mean, because if you get 3 bad ones, what do you do? I mean, especially if you're a newer store. And you don't want to say no because you just want to get into the barrel program so you can kind of build a reputation. So you're just going to take whatever you can get. Fortunately, we did get one good one. But I don't know what they would have done if all 3 would have been bad.
For the most part, though, even if you go to a distillery, sometimes they only wheel out 3 barrels for you unless you have a connection and you can get that 4th barrel, or sometimes you get lucky. And I think Wild Turkey, just lets you go through as many as you want, right? So not everyone's like that.
Yeah, 1792, the Sazerac company, they've kind of really fine-tuned to where it's like 3 barrels. It's very systemized, very systematic. Like, it's not very like, hey, go chase what you want, whatever. So you're kind of limited on what you can pick.
I think they want you out of their sandbox as soon as possible is probably what it is.
Exactly, yeah.
And so, Brett, this kind of goes back to something that I guess, Luke, you were kind of saying it too when you say, well, let's just let the master distiller pick. I think this is something that people should be cautious of when you go to a store and you do see that sticker that says selected by Harlan Wheatley or selected by Brent Elliott or selected by master distiller, wherever, right? I mean, kind of give your opinion on whether you should be a little bit more concerned when you see that rather than, if a store or person puts their faith behind it.
Well, why do I care that a master distiller selected a barrel? I will assume that he could select any barrel if he's in the warehouse that day. Master distillers, they've released plenty of whiskeys I haven't liked. So just because they like it, that's wonderful. But, I've said this before, even if someone has a palate designed by NASA and blessed by the Pope, if I don't like the whiskey, what does that mean? What does that do for me? So I think that at the end of the day, do I trust Brent Elliott's palate? Sure I do. Does that mean that I like everything he puts out? No. So if I see a sticker that says Brent Elliott selected it, or a sticker that said Luke Castle selected it, it's not an automatic which one I'm going to pick. So I think people need to be really careful of that. I think if there's one thing to learn in all of this, it's that palates are subjective. I think that I've had people whose palates I trust who do many, many barrel picks a year. I mean, I've had private picks that I thought were incredible and wildly disappointing by the same groups and the same people. I think people are making a big mistake if they run out and plug a lot of money down on something just because everybody's chasing this barrel that sold out in 2 days. That doesn't mean you're going to like it. Trust me.
What if it has a Burn Pursuit sticker on it?
It's sold out. It's sold.
But no,
I'd buy one of those.
Here's another thing too. Like, most people don't realize, they think the master distillers picks everything. They don't. It's all tasting panels. There's, sometimes 10, 20 people on these panels that pick things. So it might not even be picked by him. It's just kind of a sticker, you throw on there. But anyways, side note.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before on the show that these could also be barrels. Do you really? I mean, honestly, Luke, I'll ask you: do you really think the master distiller is sitting there and going, "Okay, like ABC Liquors on Route 45 and somewhere in middle of Florida, like I'm going to choose a good one for you"? Or are they just fucking give them sample 898.6? Like, what do you think, Luke?
I think they want to get you out of their face. I mean, there's some guys that truly enjoy it. Got to pick a barrel last year with Eddie Russell. He was still into it. It seemed like he was excited to be there. He's a really nice guy. I'm actually drinking a Russell's pick. I don't know if you can see it on the podcast. This is your guys'.
Same here.
Bourbon Pursuit right there, or newbies. So I think Eddie still likes it, and I think he enjoys it. But I've seen other places where you're getting like the regional sales guy that's just like, all right, I got a date or a tea time here, and can you hurry this up?
For sure.
You can't get those tea times back. That's a problem. So there's a question from Michael Urato. He said, I have not had that many store picks, but from my experience, it seems like a single store pick is usually better when it comes from a major chain or a state-run liquor outlet rather than something that's relatively small. Would you all agree or disagree?
Yeah, I don't think you can say that. But at the end of the day, somebody picked it. And whether it's one person or a panel of people, or whether it's for a chain or not a chain, somebody picked that barrel. So I don't think you can. I think whether Ryan picked one, Luke picked one, I picked one. I mean, it doesn't matter. I think somebody picked the barrel. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't.
But do you trust that the manager for a region for Total Wine cares about getting a great barrel and really building a reputation? Or do you trust that Jamie Ferris at Lincoln Road is worried about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's very true. I mean, you see store picks come in from Liquor Barn, Total Wine, ABC. I mean, you name them. But who is actually picking those? And not only that, is who the ones that actually work at these particular stores that they enjoy bourbon and whiskey as a passion, right? And I think that's the other thing you have to look for in your liquor store owners is what they do an actual passion, or is it a means to an end for them, right? Of actually just providing for their family, right? They realize they can sell
just another to do on their list. Well, got to pick one. But I'll say from my experience, the picks I've had from the bigger outlets have usually don't live up to the smaller retail or the smaller stores with people that care about it. That's just from my experience.
And mine too. When I see a big chain or a big store name, my first reaction is, I'm not going to like that, whether that's fair or not.
And my territory got reconfigured, and it originally had Mississippi in it. And when it got taken away, I was disappointed because I wanted to go to Hattiesburg because I've never been to the Lincoln Road package store.
We can make some introductions. I'm sure Jamie can ship you something, right?
Oh, I'm in some groups with him. We're good.
All right. Sounds good. So I guess, when we talk about Luke, you brought it up already. We talk about groups, right? I mean, we had talked to, we had Eddie Noel talked about the Bourbon Cartel. I know you guys are in a few different groups, Bourbon Crusaders and some other ones. So kind of talk about what it means to have a special group of people doing the picking for the barrel rather than saying just a regular store going off and doing it.
Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. Shopify's point of sale is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. And with Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers in line and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns, from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. And get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone. Transform your tablet into a point-of-sale system or use Shopify's point-of-sale Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/bourbon, all lowercase, and go to shopify.com/bourbon to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/bourbon. If you're anything like me, then you can't get enough about bourbon. And that's why I'm a subscriber to Bourbon Plus magazine. Bourbon Plus is a quarterly publication that tells the stories from the heart of bourbon, the farmers who grow the grain, the distillers who labor over the process, and the people like you and me who raise their glasses to celebrate it all. Subscribe to Bourbon Plus magazine today at bourbonplus.com, that's PLUS.com, and use code PURSUIT at checkout for $5 off your subscription.
So kind of talk about what it means to have a special group of people doing the picking for the barrel rather than saying just a regular store going off and doing it.
Well, first, I think it's fantastic. It's an experience that I think everybody should, if you're really into bourbon, whether you're in a picking group or not, you ought to at some point go to a distillery with somebody who's got experience and just go through that with them. I think you learn a lot. I think you kind of, once you see how the process is done, I think you have a greater appreciation for what you're actually buying. I think that it raises the game of everyone around you. I think when you have people who've got experience, I also think it can create some confusion too. And I think that, we kind of talked about this off air a little bit earlier that, you've got, and you were just on a pick, Kenny. So, you got people there whose opinions you trust and who know their stuff, but they all have different palates, whether you like it or not. And, you go through, and the more people you bring in, the more, divergent opinions you're going to have. And you can always throw out one barrel. I've never been on a pick where everyone can't agree to toss one of the three barrels, say. When you get down to those other two, you've got, I've been there where you really like one, but more people like the other. So you kind of have to sit there and go, well, I like them both. I love this one. Maybe this one's better. I don't know. And you start questioning your own taste. And so what you come up with is you wind up with a consensus a lot of the time. And, it's not always a home run like you think it is. And it's rarely a consensus opinion. And I think I was on a pick once where there were two people whose palates probably were more respected than anybody else's. And it was like, say, 9 or 10 people picked one barrel and the other two picked the second barrel. And the two that picked the second barrel, we were all kind of like, did we make a mistake? So I don't know. I think that I think it's impressive. I do think that some of the groups, and I may be biased in this, generally do better picks than others for me. And I think that's probably true for everyone. I think whatever group you're in, you're going to love the picks. I mean, and nobody comes out. You don't hear anybody talking about their picks like, oh, it was just okay, right? Everyone thinks their picks are amazing, and they, everyone on the internet should be chasing after them, and that's just the way it is. But yeah, I think it's a special experience. I think there's a lot of camaraderie. There's a lot of things that can be learned, and I think there's I think it's something everybody should try and do at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a great experience, and I think we'll talk about the experience here in a little bit because we had a few questions rolling about some other questions regarding that. But Luke, I kind of want to get your idea on that as well. I mean, do you think that special groups that go in for barrel picks are, do they have an advantage? And as well as, I guess I'll twist it and I'll ask you a different question. Is that, do you think it is more beneficial for a store to sit there and say, I'm going to go and try to find the right people that are maybe in the Louisville area, or maybe that have the taste palette or the palates that are pretty well known, to actually go and pick these barrels for me, because I'm just a liquor store owner. Like, I'm not a whiskey connoisseur by any means. So what do you think that's a good avenue that liquor stores should be looking at as well?
Yeah, totally. I mean, look, we're in a bourbon boom right now. And if it says small batch or special release or whatever, it flies off the shelf and gets flipped 5 seconds later for 4 times what people paid for it. And I'm not trying to encourage that behavior, but if I was a liquor store owner today and I had to support my family on it, I would certainly want to try to hype my barrel and make it more popular and draw people into my store. And one of the ways you could do that really easily is to find 4 bourbon nerds like us. Maybe we should form our own little group here.
I'm really cool. I'm not.
Yeah. Everybody except for Ryan then. And say, look, I had these guys that know what they're doing. Pick this barrel for me. You should come into my store and get it. I think that's a smart business decision right now. And, regardless if they actually pick a better barrel, which I think we would, but I think that's just a smart business play.
Yeah. And I just want to add one thing to that. As I do some picks for a store owner here locally, and one thing that's hard with him is that I'm a whiskey geek. My palate is, I'm looking for certain things. Whereas when we pick barrels, he's like, well, that might be good for whiskey geeks, but I need this to sell to everyday folks. And so we've passed up on like 2 or 3 that I just were blown away by, but he thought these would be better sellers for his patrons. So you got to take that into account too, that store owners are going to be like, what's going to sell to my owners, whereas a bourbon group's going to be kind of more geared toward us geeks. So they're going to get kind of more of those crazier off-profile picks that we like.
Brett, I was going to say, I see you shaking your head, man. You're good to start firing away.
No, because I've been there before, Ryan, and I've been sitting there and I've heard this. I love this one, but my customers would want that one. And I think you got to be willing to take your customers on that journey with you, or you're never going to have the reputation of somebody who does something special.
Yep.
I mean, anybody, you want to pick it, you want to come up with a pick that appeals to everyone. Pick something really sweet, because that's what, every, novice bourbon drinker just wants something sweet and something nice. But I think that you have to be willing to say, if you own a liquor store and you like whiskey and you find something, you go, that is different, that is awesome. I don't know if my customers will like it, get it. I mean, let them trust you and then build a reputation that way. Otherwise, you're just like everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. I've heard that argument plenty of times when they say, we've got to find a barrel that fits my customer's palate. But it's like your customers come in and they buy standard stuff off the shelf. Your customers come in and if you're getting a barrel and you're getting 150, 200 bottles, you really think you're going to sit there and make sure that everyone gets a fair shot here or gets some sort of special treatment? It's impossible, right? So yeah, I don't think that. I think it is a bad mentality for stores to go in and think like it's, and put it, Luke, you said it best. We're in a boom. You think this is not going to sell? Like, you put something out there that's going to be a little bit crazy or different, and people are going to be like, oh nope, it's going to sit. Like, it's bourbon, man. It's not going to sit for long.
No. And you got to think about it from the long-term perspective. Again, if you're a store owner of, yes, I want to sell this whole barrel. The sooner I sell it, the more money I make faster, I guess. But if you help educate the consumer, especially today's consumer, bring them along in their journey, you don't have a customer anymore. You have a client. That's somebody that's going to be with you for a long time. So if you take them from Basil Hayden's to Blanton's to a higher proof store pick that's barreled at 117, 120 proof, and you've coached them along the way, they're going to buy everything from you now. They're going to come buy their vodka from you and their beer and their wine too. So I think you can build more than just a bourbon consumer. That's what these stores really should be going for. And most of the smart ones are.
That's smart. Make it a real rounded out individual, right?
Exactly.
Only the more you consume, the more round you will actually get, right? So
for beer drinkers.
Yeah, especially for those beer drinkers. So I guess when we're talking about the hype, we talked about that a little bit. So we should probably move into a subject that is made itself a little bit more pronounced probably in the past year and a half. And that's the fact that people put aftermarket stickers on their bottles. So Brett, I see you smiling. I kind of want to get your idea. Like, is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Has this actually created a false sense of want in the market? Like, what's your thought behind this?
Are you talking about the last year and a half or the last week and a half?
Well, it's everywhere. I just remember about a year and a half ago. I mean, it started really coming up, but man alive. I mean, shit, don't be wrong. I'm guilty too, right? We did a pick and I threw a sticker on there, right? Like, I want to be part of the cool kids too. So what's your kind of thought on that?
I love them. I think they're great. I think as long as they're not offensive and they're not untruthful, who cares? They're so much fun. There's some great ones out there. I mean, there's a nod to somebody who picked it. There's a nod to somebody who couldn't be on the pick. There's a superhero one. There's movie ones. They can be terrific. And I think they really, listen, at the end of the day, for us on this and for a lot of people listening, we want great picks to drink. For most people, though, these are baseball cards. And you need, having one sticker on one versus one on the other. I got to collect this one because this has a picture of a character in a superhero movie, or this makes fun of some guy in the bourbon community who, none of my friends are going to know, but my online buddies who I've never met, who I talk to more than my wife, they'll all know who that is, So that, I think they're terrific. I hope they don't go away. And I think the distillers are doing the right thing by allowing them. But I do think that at times they've gone over the line. And I think that, as long as they're within the bounds of good taste, I think they're terrific.
Luke, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the folks that seem to be doing them are more the private barrel picking groups. It's not the liquor stores that are doing it. And I think the guys that really get into it and collect these things and drink them and participate, it's almost like a nod to the fact that they're not going to, like Ryan was talking about before, I'm not going to go stand in line and chase the old unicorns anymore. So these are my unicorns now. And it's my way to kind of poke fun of that other stuff. And to kind of take, because at the end of the day, it's just bourbon that we're drinking and having a good time. So if we could put a fun, goofy sticker on there, let's do
it. So I guess when you take the other part of that, I mean, do you think that some of these are creating some sort of false sense of demand? Because I mean, let's just take a regular pick that somebody in some liquor store in Minnesota picked, or Wisconsin or Iowa, and then you've got Jaws, right? We've all seen Jaws, or The Greatest with the Muhammad Ali tribute one. Like, by your very nature, you're just attracted to those ones. However,
some chick with a beard on her face,
or the bearded lady, right? I mean, that's giving props to even like the Smooth Ambler one that came out. So do you think that are people just idiots that they think that just because there's a sticker on the side, it's worth more?
We're talking about bourbon here, Kenny. Are you kidding me? Is anything reality?
Well, I think at the end of the day, is it any good? I mean, I'm looking over my shoulder right now, and there's a bottle of Buffalo Trace in an auction that's going for $165. Just Buffalo Trace. So
that's the Bourbon bottle in it.
We wish.
Look, and I know the guys who picked it. They've done hundreds and hundreds of picks. I'm sure it's good. I might have a couple of bottles coming to me on a cost plus ship basis. So I think
you might be sending me one.
Sure, absolutely. So I mean, in situations like that, again, it just goes back to the guys picking them. Are they good dudes? They know what they're talking about. They have a good palate, and the sticker is fun or not. It looks kind of cool. But I mean, how many of your in-person buddies, not as Brett referenced, not your online buddies that you talk about whiskey about, care about it? They want to come and drink your pappy.
That's right. I think you hit the nail on the head. The one thing that I like about stickers is
that your pictures on them.
Well, for the two that I've been on, for somehow my face ends up on the side of them, which
that's why I like them, because I can show people. I'm like, hey, look at this. I'm on the bottle.
I think it is cool. I mean, it is an opportunity to kind of capture the day. It's also an opportunity to sit there remember something about it, right? Whether you say something or somebody says something dumb and that becomes the name of the pick, or whether a particular moment happened. Like when you think of Jimmy's Guard Shack, that was a Russell Reserve pick that we did with Cork and Bottle. It was because they were driving in the truck through the Guard Shack, and Jimmy was just sitting there waiting for somebody to come pick him up, and they said, "Hop on the truck," right? Like it's a tribute of just something that happened that day that helps you remember it when you go back and you look at those stickers or you look at those tags or anything like that. So I do think it is kind of cool that those have kind of caught on a little bit. But
I think the distilleries are in favor of what we're doing right now, talking about these stickers. And I think they also probably love the drama that these things create. I mean, the stuff that goes on with the stickers and with the picks, it's hysterical. If you can sit back and just laugh at it, it's incredible. I mean, the jealousy, the anger, the hurt feelings, the reporting to the distilleries, the emails. I hope you need to know that these guys are doing this and to your bottle, and like they care. I mean, they love it.
There's somebody who put a picture of Hulk and put Goik Smash on it. What's this mean?
That's incredible.
Yeah. All right. Before we get down into the nerd hole there, so let's change it to a different topic called we're just going to call speculation here. So Brett, you had kind of mentioned at the very beginning of the episode of talking about some of the store picks that are just kind of like no longer there, no longer available. Things that you had mentioned, Van Winkle, which is never going to happen again, but things like Elmer, some other store picks that we had never been around before. But when we just think about just say ETL in general, I mean, do you really think that Buffalo Trace is kind of creating this false sense of like, there's not enough, that we can't do like 5 barrels and it goes out to the most important customers that we have? Or do you think they're really trying to just be fair? Like, what's your thought on that?
I've never really understood that with Elmer T. Lee. I mean, you I get that everything at Buffalo Trace is allocated, but I mean, what makes an Elmer T. I mean, Elmer T. Lee is a non-age. It's a great bourbon. I like it. It's non-age stated. I can't imagine that they couldn't make enough of it to do private picks if they wanted to. I don't quite get what that's all about. But nevertheless, I mean, you got a bottle there, the Death bottle. You've got, a couple store picks that have been done. They go for tons of money. I've had good barrels in Elmer, off the shelf that are great. I can't imagine paying up $200 for one of those special bottles. So I don't know why they don't do it. If they can do an OWA pick, why can't they do an Elmer? Why is it? I've never understood why that's so much harder to make.
Or even with that, like, I mean, of course, like there's a few, I guess you'd say unicorns out there, like the Benny's Weller 12 and some of these other ones. But I mean, you kind of get this idea that, I don't know, I'll take a line that came from Fred Minnick, that a lot of these people or a lot of these companies are forgetting the ones who took them to the dance. They're forgetting about that guy who took them to the dance. And they're getting, they're trying to get a little bit too big for themselves. And maybe they're not throwing a bone here or there because I'm sure it wouldn't be hard to say, like, we'll do 1 barrel of private Weller 12 for this particular person. Do you think they, and Luke, I'll kind of get your opinion on this. Do you think they do that to not piss everybody off? Or do you think they do it because it really is like a shortage that they just want to save it all just for standard releases? Or maybe it's just too much trouble for them?
I think there's a little bit of all. Everything you just said that weighs into it. I mean, from what I understand about the bottling lines, it is a pain in the butt to do private picks. You got to shut it down. You got to clean out the gear. You got to send them through. You got to package and everything else separate. So it does interrupt their business flow. I think part of it is they're going to sell it anyway, so they don't need to. I mean, Elmer's not something that sits anywhere. The last bottle I got was probably 6 months ago, and it came out of the manager's office. So, and I'm not unique in that regard. So I just don't think that they have to. So they're not going to go through the hassle of doing it. I don't know when the bourbon boom slows down, pops, fizzles, whatever it's going to be. At that point, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to sell those private picks and some of the harder things out again. But I mean, for the time being, I think it's just a matter of they're going to sell it anyway.
Here's something to consider for Buffalo Trace, though. When I was just out there, you guys were just there too. So they've got 16 warehouses now, and they're adding 30 more. So at what point are they going to have more than enough to do private picks with everything they want?
In about 6 to 8 years.
maybe a little bit past there. We might all have a little bit more gray hair by then. Luke, I don't know what to tell you, buddy.
It's already.
Heaven Hill's going to have a ton to bid for private picks because they just put up 350,000 warehouses. So they're going to have a ton here coming up soon. Well, not soon, 6 to 8 years.
Yeah. And then, so I guess, following the Heaven Hill train, I'll kind of get your side on that. Either, Brett or Luke, you can answer. They used to do some other private picks. I mean, there has been one that was a JTS Brown that was done by the Silver Dollar here. It was the only one that's ever been done. You used to see Henry McKenna, Baldwin and Bond. You used to see a lot of those. And Bernheim's, because I remember I had a Lock and Key that was in CF. That was a Bernheim.
Yep.
But now all you can see is Elijah Craig, Naz. So what do you think is holding them back from doing something that appeals to more of this bourbon nerd market? Or do you think, Luke, maybe you said best, like, shit, it's going to sell. Like, why change it up?
I think they're putting their stock into the Elijah Craig barrel proof. Seems like that release gets bigger and bigger. It's not hard to find anymore. And I'm happy about that. It's one of my, and I know Brett agrees, it's one of my go-to daily drinkers that's reliable. It's always good. And you can get it for $60-$70 really consistently. So I think with limited supply, they're just going to focus on that. I wouldn't mention which warehouse it's from because the whole world doesn't need to know, but Brett was part of a pretty legendary Elijah Craig pick. I think they're going to be selective about which groups get to pick from which warehouses, and that's kind of the reward. It's not that they're going to let you have a 15-year barrel proof anything, but maybe they'll let you go over to that other warehouse that nobody else gets to pick from and take a barrel.
You said enough about that now.
Does it rhyme with Schmeatsville? Deetsville?
Hey.
I'm just kidding.
But one thing, people have to realize the demand overseas is where all the stock's going. It's going to these household brands like Evan Williams Black and Buffalo Trace, like to the regular brands. That's where they're pumping all the resources to meet the demands over there. That's why there's a shortage of everything now, because they've been pumping so much over there. And so once the supply kind of gets built up, I think we're going to have a huge plethora of choices here in about 8 years or so. But that's my little inside knowledge, is that's what they tell me anyways.
Well, yeah, and that's Ryan, that's a great segue into the potential straight from the barrel private picks that may be coming our way soon, huh?
Yes.
We need to grease a few palms to make that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be ideal.
And so to kind of tail off that one a little bit, when you think about, how big these places are getting, and a lot of their stock is being dumped into their stuff that's hitting mass market. Why did they still even do single barrels? I mean, in your opinion, if the bourbon's going to sell, what's the point of even doing single barrels anymore? So I kind of want to get your thought of just the coming from a thought process of somebody that is in the industry, that is sitting behind the other side of the desk. Like, why would they want to still continue to do single barrels?
I think that they have to. I think that there are stores out there. Luke, you mentioned Lincoln Road, Eight Spirits. I mean, there's stores like that across the country. They need something different. They always need something different. I mean, you have to be able to offer private picks to people. And I think the distilleries know that. And they've got to continue to offer that to people.
Well, they're also trying to appeal to all consumers. I know when we get in our little bourbon bubble in our little communities, we think that everybody else cares about this stuff as much as we do, but they just don't. Right? I mean, it's our little world. And so they need to sell a lot of Basil Hayden. They need to sell a lot of 90 proof, pretty watered down stuff to the mass consumers. And so they're gonna and that's where they're spending all their marketing dollars. The four of us, if it's good, the four of us are going to find it and get it. They don't need to advertise to us or market to us at all. We're going to figure it out because we spend way more time worried about this than is reasonable or acceptable most of the time.
Well said.
So it's really funny. Go ahead, Luke.
No, go ahead.
It just reminded me of a funny story. I was watching Tombstone with my son the other day, and if you ever watch these old movies, they walk into a bar and they go up to the bar and they go, "Give me a whiskey." And that's it. That's all there is. It always gets me. I mean, they're not specifying anything. Just give me a whiskey. Here you go. Great. That's how it used to be.
Yeah.
Well, I think the brands also recognize that there's less brand loyalty today, where people are chasing authenticity and quality. I don't know about you guys, but when I grew up, my dad drank Canadian Club. That's what he drank. He always had it. If the bar didn't have it, he would leave the bar. And he was a Canadian Club guy. And now when people ask me, and you guys could chime in with your response, I go, what's your favorite bourbon? That's like a 20-minute answer.
That's a loaded question.
Yeah. Well, it depends on my mood. Do I have a good day, a bad day? Do I want, So I just don't think there's that brand loyalty anymore. So they need to have all these different line extensions to capture the different people out there.
You've never let your dad forget that, have you? You couldn't drink Old Granddad, huh?
I gave him Pappy 20-year from 2011, Stitzel Weller. He took one sip and it's like, yeah, it's not as good as my stuff.
That's awesome.
Never did that again.
Oh man, that's pretty hardcore that he actually leave a bar. I don't know if there'd be ever a drink there to be like, nah, I can't even drink here. That's impressive.
Well, he's grown up a little bit. I've kind of forced him to try other things. So he likes Maker's Mark now.
I mean, I will give it to you. I mean, I think everybody kind of asks this, especially when you start talking to somebody and they'll, we'll say, oh yeah, I run a bourbon podcast. And what's the second question they ask? Well, it's your favorite bourbon. And yeah, it turns into like, oh gosh, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, let's start. Right? I have to go back to my mind and look at my shelves and try to figure out what do I usually go to. So yeah, you're right. There's not a lot of brand loyalty that does happen anymore.
It was funny. Yeah, I was at dinner last week, some guys, and they were like, I was telling them the bourbon podcast thing, and they're like, oh, can you tell what's in this bourbon and Coke? And I'm like, no. Coke? And they're like, can you tell if this is Woodford or Old Forester in this bourbon Coke? And I was like, hell no. I was like, I have no idea.
It was a good store pick, maybe.
Yeah.
So back to the store picks right here. We'll kind of wrap it up and really we're going to talk a little bit about the experience because I think that's something that at least not everybody gets to go on and go to. As more and more people crowd and flood these forums, there's more people that are being aware of this. They want to one day experience it. So let's first just talk about the experience. And Front Metlick asks, he says, when you taste a barrel, what's the first taste that either, turns you on or turns you off of a pick? Is it sweet? Is it not sweet? Does it lack flavor? Or what makes you really excited about that particular barrel?
Okay.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Well, nobody was going, so I was like, I'll break the silence. Usually for me, it's the finish. Like, I like when something like, it's kind of subtle on the front end, but in the back end, it just like, pow, hits you. That's what excites me whenever I kind of start tasting through barrels.
Yeah, I like something that hits you a little bit up front, does the old Kentucky hug, but I like a super long finish, and the complexity is what really gets it for me. It's got to have some depth to it and kind of fill your mouth. If it's thin and just kind of goes through, and 10 seconds later you're like, "What the hell just happened? I don't taste anything anymore." I'm done. I won't have another sip of that usually.
I usually the day before I'll whatever the pick is, I'll drink a little bit of whatever the standard release is and really kind of get a baseline. And I really want to try something. I want to find something different. And so, you kind of come in with that, you got that flavor fresh in your mind and you want something different, very different from that, but good still. I mean, like we talked about earlier, sometimes it's not. And so you kind of have to make do I want a really good representation of some pick? I want something just crazy off the wall different. And so I'm looking for something different that's still really, really good, because at the end of the day, I mean, who cares if it tastes like every other bottle you can get or every other pick that's done? I mean, I want something that people try and they go, wow, that's great. Where can I get that? You really can't. I mean, it's unique. So, go pick your own.
I think Kenny and I are in the same line. It's funny, the Buffalo Trace pick we did, the guys we all like two, but one was like really off profile and one was kind of like, this tastes like a Buffalo Trace. And we're like, all right, well, what are we going for? Do we want a standard Buffalo Trace or we want something that's going to be unique? So yeah, I'm with you on that.
So I guess, Brett, I'll throw another question at your way. Since you try to taste the baseline the night before,
why don't you do it in the parking lot?
That's what I'd say. I should bring a flask in at that point and just do a little thing on here on the side so you can really see if you're able to tell the difference.
That's not a bad idea. It's just if you go to Buffalo Trace, make sure you bring extra glasses because there won't be enough to go around.
That's true.
Fair point.
And so that'll kind of lead into the last question here, which it doesn't really matter which distillery you're going to, whether it's Buffalo Trace or Wild Turkey or 1792 or pick anyone. It could be anyone here. But Michael Urado asks, are there any words of wisdom or tricks of the trade when it comes to going on your first barrel pick? For me, it's like take it easy. Don't drink too much because it's easy.
Meditate before, so you don't like go too crazy.
I think that probably there's a couple tips I would give that I learned. One is I would step outside if you can when you're tasting, and I think that when you're in the warehouse, you can be overwhelmed by the smell, and it can really affect how you're evaluating something. I think that another piece of advice I would give is I would try all of them on your own and rate them all on your own before you share your opinions with anybody else. Right or wrong, I think it's we've all seen it's incredibly easy to get influenced, not only by the bottle you're holding, but by what the guy next to you says. And everyone goes into these the first time very insecure. They don't know how their palate is. They don't know if they're good enough. They don't know if they're going to pick a good, but everybody tastes differently. And I think you need to evaluate it on your own and see, then see what everyone else thinks. I think that's the best way to do it.
So you don't sneak in your own ice cubes to test with it? Is that true?
No, how would you do that?
I'm just kidding.
This is on Coke.
Yeah, there you
go. For me, it's try not to be too hungover. I mean, you get if you haven't been to Louisville
tough
before,
for you.
Yeah, it's tough times, but I've managed. Louisville's an exciting town. There's a lot of cool things to see, the cool bars to hang out at. So it will affect your ability to taste in the next morning. So try to take it easy. Get some food in your belly. So that way, if you're going to go to like a Wild Turkey where you're going to get to taste 8 barrels, by the 7th, you're going to be done. You're not going to be able to taste anything, and you're probably going to have a good buzz going. So, and just sip. The other thing I always tell people, because I host a lot of tastings, breathe, taste with your mouth open or smell with your mouth open. You can't taste with your mouth open. That'd be kind of hard. But Brad was going to say something. I saw that coming. But smell with your mouth open. Take your time. There's no rush. And ask a lot of questions because the people that are hosting the event, they do them all the time. A lot of them get really bored and they get engaged and they start to care if you bring them into it. So ask them questions. If they are in a bad mood that they find, ask them some more and try to tap their knowledge because they don't put bad people in those rooms that don't know what they're doing. So if you can tap that knowledge, I think that's important.
See, my advice would be to get as hungover as possible. Kind of go hit Lola's till about 1 a.m. The night before. No. What these guys said is totally spot on. Like you said, Kenny, mine is like, this is one of my favorite things to do of all time is go pick barrels. Like I get so excited for each one. Like I'm almost too amped up. You're like, you get there and you're all giddy and like everybody's having a good time. You're like, all right, and you're sitting there drinking and talking, and then you forget. So for me, anyways, you forget that you're even picking. You're like, oh wait, I got to pick something, So it's just enjoy it. That's the fun part is going and hanging out with your friends and whoever's going. Just have a good time and talk to the people there. Just enjoy the moment because that's like it's one of the coolest things you'll ever do, or at least that I've done, anyways.
I think we forget that, Ryan. Is at the end of the day, it's all about fun, and that's what bourbon's for, anyway.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
I always try to soak in the kind of the experience too. I mean, you walk in, again, Wild Turkey, you walk in, if you're in warehouse, I think it's H. I think it was built in like 1892 or something like that. And it's a way to add to the experience. And it kind of gives you a sense of how cool it is, what you're doing right there and how many people have gotten to do that.
I know at least that warehouse, it does not have an electrical outlet except for the one outside.
There's one outside in the whole damn warehouse.
we can tell you that for a fact because we recorded a podcast there and it's an absolute pain in the ass. So
yeah, don't try to record podcasts when you're doing your pick.
So that's good, and I think that we can always round it out here by circling back and saying you should always have fun with this. But as Brett has already pointed out, that you can pick a bad barrel, so don't screw it up too bad, right?
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. So, guys, I want to say thank you again. This was a fun conversation, just talking about barrel picks. It was really enjoyable. But I want to let you all just kind of give a plug for yourselves, where people can find you, whether it's online, on Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook. Give a plug for Bourbon and Banter. So go ahead and go for it.
You can read our stuff at bourbonandbanter.com. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Brett Atlas, on Facebook too. Come check us out.
Yep, bourbonbanter.com, Twitter, I'm at Castle44, and Instagram, El Castle Grande. I'm a lot taller when I'm not sitting down.
It's like Brian was sipping corn. He shoved to the barrel pick. He's like 8 foot tall.
He is very tall.
Well, we guys will have to have a face-off one day, so that's good. So, fellas, again, thank you so much for joining. For everybody else, make sure you follow these guys on social media. Make sure you also follow us as well. Follow Bourbon Pursuit on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Bourbon Pursuit. If you do like what you hear, please make sure you support the show. You can go to patreon.com, patreon.com/Bourbon Pursuit. And I want to say thank you for everybody from our Patreon members that are actually here listening in the chat. We had about 10 people on. We had a lot of people sitting here joining and asking questions along with us as well. So that's another perk for being a Patreon member, is you can actually sit here and be a part of these recordings. So Ryan, go ahead and close us out.
Yeah, thanks, guys. That was super fun. That, like I said, as people could tell, I get really excited about barrel picks, and doing the whole experience is great. I hope everyone gets to at least do one in their lifetime, and I'm looking forward to more Bourbon Pursuit ones with Kenny, and looking that they're awesome. But I have a public service announcement, because my grandfather, who was 84, passed away, and he was a big bourbon collector and never opened anything because he said it was the good stuff, the nice stuff. These are sinless shells. Well, he passed away, and we never got to drink them together, and it's such a shame. And like, now we have all these bottles, and our family's going to get to enjoy them, but I just wish we could have enjoyed them together. So remember, guys, all these bottles, they're not trophies. They can be for sale, but just try to enjoy them. I mean, that's what it's all about. So anyways, see you next time.
You're here.